Alright, g'day, hi and welcome. I don't know how long this video is going to be, but I figured it was something I was thinking about. I guess we'll just jump into this. So, got my guitars folder. I got to make a heavy metal folder, I think. Yeah, it's like, what am I going to show people? Okay, okay, well, let's see what we got, right? Okay, the concept of this video is basically just some of the stuff I noticed about being in bands over the years. And it's been a while since I've been in a band, and I know a lot of people have a hard start to try to get into the music, even just for fun, let alone even the music industry. And I'm in the process right now of recording my third album, which, don't worry, nobody's ever heard of the first two, probably, very much, unless you follow my channel. My first one was called Not Reg Me in the Raw, and it was basically just my Ibanez AEL 10 acoustic, no effects. I might have added a little bit of room reverb or something into it. It was 10 tracks, and I re-released it out on SoundCloud, so maybe I'll have a link down below if you'd like to check it out. It's free to check it out, and if you like it, you can support it there too. My second one was kind of more like mini soundtracks, instrumentals, and it was called SG61 or Intergalactic SG61 Intergalactic Mega Blaster, and that one is basically with my SG61 and using like the artificial drums that were in my BR1200 recording studio, and it was just basically little like some of them like about a minute long or whatever, tunes, instrumentals, just something you'd probably hear in like a commercial or something like that. I just did it for the sake of doing it. And then my third one here is going to be like full length, which I haven't named it yet, so and I've only got one track down. I've got 10 or 15 tracks that are possibly going to go on it, and almost all the songs are written. I'm just working the fine details of the arrangement of how I'm going to play them and what have you. And once those are done, then that album will be out, and it's either going to be called Atlas or White Whale. I'm not sure what it's going to be called yet. Depends which song which song is going to resonate more. Both of which songs are on the album, and they're going to be really kick-ass songs. If you like the sound of a 12-string in kind of like high-speed metal mode, you're going to like Atlas. I was just jamming on it today. I was like, ooh, that's good. That's really good. And I guess that would be a good place to start. Whenever you're writing songs, make sure you write songs that you yourself want to listen to, because if your songs don't inspire you to listen to your own songs, then no one else is going to probably want to listen to them either. So, excuse me. So, yeah. The other thing I did was years ago, back in the 90s, dating myself here, I was in many bands, and almost all the bands were cover bands, and every now and then we would write a song or two. But there was one band where it was called Syndicate. We wrote, well, the lead singer, she had her old album out, so we did some of her songs from her album, and I can't remember what her album was called, whatever. And the bass player, him and I are still in contact. It's just he lives really, really far from me, like a couple hundred miles away, so we'll probably never see each other face to face again, but we talk from time to time, and he's still into the creative stuff, with the bass and stuff like that. But he used to be the bass player for a band called Annihilator. They had this real kick-ass song called Alice in Hell, so if you're into metal, you definitely want to check out the Alice in Hell song. But he got kicked out of that band, and after that band he ended up in ours, and he wrote songs left, right, and center. And him and I come up with some pretty cool riffs and stuff like that. I don't remember most of the songs because it's back in the 90s, and I never really kept a good recordings of them. So we played them live many times, but I never really got to record them, right? So that was too bad. And then my very, very first bands that I was in, we wrote some songs, but we were teenagers, and of course every song would have been cheesy. There's one I sort of remember, I just don't remember all the lyrics to it, but I remember the chorus and the main guitar lines. And long story short, bands came and went, you know what I mean? And at my heyday, which was basically 80s and 90s, I don't know how many bands I've been in, probably about a dozen or so. But there was three that really, I would say, like really did something. And one was called Reckless Angel. The other one was called Syndicate. We had a female singer on that. She had a 3 octave range. It was really cool. And the bands got along really good. But there were things that some of the bands that I was in, although I've always been a really easy, chill person to work with musically, I'm one of those people that I don't really care about what we're playing as long as we play it really, really well. And I'm also one of those people that I'll play just about anything. I just really don't care. I'll play because I like playing. And when it comes to covers, I don't sweat the details too much. Like, you don't. I'm not one of those who have to play it note for note perfect or whatever. But I did notice a lot of things when joining bands and stuff like that. That whenever you joined a band, you almost knew if it was going to take or not almost right away. And there was a few, maybe, I don't know. I can't give you exactly how. I'm not going to say this is the 10 things to watch for, but I'll just, at random kind of blurt them out. The first thing I noticed was you meet the people, whoever they are, doesn't matter who they are. You hit it off and you talk the talk, and everything sounds like it's going to go, wow, this is something new, it's all exciting, whatever. And you say, yeah, let's do this. We're going to jam, we're going to get together. And it never happens. Just never materializes. It's done before it even starts. So it's just talk. It never gets past that talk stage, which you'll know, okay, it's like been 3 months we've been talking about jamming and or getting together, and it just doesn't happen. It doesn't mean the other person's bad or a liar. It's just like life. Oh well, I'm too busy. That's usually the number one thing that kills the band and it's what got me out of a lot of bands was my job. Now I'm not saying quit your job and go join a band. I'm not saying that either, because people have to survive and they have to make ends meet. But I did notice that was one of the biggest hindrances to my musical career has always been wasting time at work. However, I like to eat, and I like having a place to live other than a sidewalk. So I had to make the adult decisions of going to work. But that was one of the things that I found is that it's very hard to get people together. When you're teenagers, it doesn't matter. You're off on the summer holidays, and you're teenagers. Teenagers typically don't work, right? So you go, play all day in the garage. Well, your parents are out working, so yeah, like life doesn't get much better than that, as long as your neighbors don't complain too much, right? So anyway, the getting out of the teenage stage into young adult stage where you're out on your own, you have your own place and all that, you got an apartment or whatever, it's like great. You can bring over the bass player, you can bring over the guitar player, and even the vocalist. But the drums are out of the question, because the second somebody starts pounding on the drums, you're going to get evicted, right? So the drums are just loud. No matter what, they resonate through the walls and down the street and whatever. So you don't really, you don't really get the opportunity to find a place to jam, right? As a full band, that became very apparent for me with a lot of bands, was finding the place to do it. It's a kind of what I'm up against now. It's like I can't really, I don't really have a place. I need a garage and a studio, a place to fix my broken vehicles, and enough room for a full piece band and 5 or 6 piece band in there. That's what I need. A studio, jam spot, garage is like the ultimate man cave, I guess. I need that. And a well-stocked beer fridge, I guess, even though I don't drink much, but, anyway. But then you join the band, you hit it off, and you actually start to jam a bit, but, you come up against that problem of where do you jam, and it's like, okay, we'll jam at my place. Oh, okay, the wife or the parents or whoever or the neighbors or whatever, they put a kibosh to it really quick, right? It's like, oh, you guys are too noisy, you know what I mean? So then you go try to find somewhere else. And suddenly, after a couple of months of doing this, it's like, okay, well, we have to get rent a place. And this is where things start getting complicated right off the get-go. You're going to have 4 band members. Okay, 2 are going to pay, the other 2 are not. Almost guarantee it's going to work out like that. 2 are going to have cash to pay, the other guys are going to fall behind and never have the money. That, I'm telling you this one from experience, but there's always somebody in the band that doesn't pay their fair share, and this will break up a band very quickly. Um, Now, let's say you get past that logistic problem, okay, where, okay, you found guys you can get together, or girls, or whatever, you get together, you go play, and everything's going good, you even get a jam place, and they're even paying the jam place, or maybe they have a place for free or whatever, and you can jam. That's one nice thing about living out here in the country. A lot of people, live far enough from each other that you can, when you do got a place to jam, you can bring up the volume pretty good. But then it gets, okay, it's now going on month number 8, and you haven't done a gig yet, because we're not going to gig until we play a perfect show. You know what I mean? And you're going to get those type of guys. And there was one band I almost quit. The drummer and I almost quit because we were just like, we're not going anywhere, and we had to sit down and say, look, we've been playing for 3 months now. Like, we're not going to get any better than we're at. You know what I mean? Like, we're good enough. Trust me, we're good enough. Let's just get out there. And I think what it was the lead singer and the other guitar player were the guitar player. He wasn't too nervous on stage, but I think the lead singer, he never really played on stage before. He'd done karaoke, he'd done stuff like that. He played in bands, but he never really played like on stage in a bar with 300 or 400 people watching. You know what I mean? Like, he's never played that. And because of that, I think that's what the whole, oh, we're not ready yet, oh, we're not ready yet, oh, we're not ready yet. It's like, yeah, we're ready. Mind you, we had a hard time getting a good bass player, because bass players are like, for every one bass player, there's probably about 4,000 guitar players, right? So guitars are never a problem. It's usually guitarists looking for a bass player. The bass players are, especially if they're a good bass player, very hard to keep hold of a bass player, let alone a good bass player. So a lot of guitar players I knew, they switched to bass just so they could get into a band, because it was just, everything became like, nobody wanted the guitar players and nobody could find a bass player. that was a big problem, and probably still is, I would imagine, for most people. So we'd go through some bass players, and we went through. There was 3 of them I remember that we went through. So finally, we got got around the logistics of paying, the guys paying on time. We got around the other logistics of getting together, and we got around the other logistics of getting out and playing gigs, and not waiting too long. I mean, you don't want to rush into the gigs right away. But we got one bass player, and this guy was a good bass player. He wasn't too bad. But he was much larger than everybody else in the band, vertically and horizontally. You know what I mean? So he didn't have that sleek look like the rest of us handsome devils looked, right? For me, it was a non-issue. But for the other guys, they wanted that image, right? Where we all kind of looked the same, right? And this guy, I mean, he was a rocker, whatever, it didn't matter. But I thought he was a pretty good bass player. I always had fun with him on stage. Like, he was just one of those really likable people. Like, he was like 6'5", 300 pounds, and like, he was just a big guy, but he was bizarre to watch on stage, because he was just like this towering giant, and whatever. But he was always like moshing, and he was very, very entertaining to watch. And him and I would do like goofy stuff on stage, whatever, right? It was fun. I can't even remember the guy's name. I could picture his face like you wouldn't believe, but I could barely. He wasn't in the band very long, but I remember when he joined us. We jammed for like 8 hours the first time we met. Like, it was just like it all clicked. It's like, and he was trying out for us or whatever, and we all kind of, like, everybody in the all the working bands at the time, everybody was kind of playing the same covers and everything. So there was a lot of nobody was really that original. Everybody, everybody played their version of the Cult's Love Removal Machine. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, I play it this way. Okay, well, I play it this way. Okay, well, we'll mix the two, right? And anyway, I remember him saying this specifically. He was like, how long have you guys been together? And we're like, I think at the time we were going on like 6 or 7 months. And it was like, how many gigs you played? It's like, well, we haven't played a gig yet. We're going to soon. And he goes, when do you want to do your next gig? He goes, and the singer was kind of like, oh, well, when we're ready. He goes, either you got to be ready in like less than 30 days. Like 30 days is too long to take to put together a set list and do a gig. So I'm like, for me, I'm like, set list is no problem. We probably had 90 or 100 tunes all ready to go, and that was just the stuff that we, just knew off the top of our heads, the same, right? So I'm like, yeah, let's go, let's do this, like I'm like egging them on, yeah, kick these guys' asses, let's get out the door and go do some gigs. But that was the thing, don't wait too long to get out there. You know what I mean? Like there's some people like they want to stay in rehearsal space forever and ever, and this is what happens typically. They will pick two or three songs, and it doesn't mean, again, not bad people are in like that. I'm not trashing them that way, but I'm saying when you notice this pattern, mention it, saying, look, we've been practicing. We did three different songs last week, three different songs this week, and then the songs we did a couple of weeks before we didn't practice, right? So it's like, okay, let's put a set list together, and then let's get this song down, and then we'll put a set list together. No, put the set list together first. Like, figure out what songs, go through them rough for the first few times. And then if something really doesn't work, don't waste forever on that tune. Like, we used to do a lot of Van Halen tunes, right? And Van Halen tunes were really my forte because of the guitar stuff, right? And the other guitar player, he wasn't a bad lead player, and I wasn't a phenomenal lead player. I was a good lead player, but I'm not Eddie Van Halen. I'm much better of a player now than I was back then. But I was good enough, I was good enough to pull it off, right? And the thing was is that we would do songs like, I forget what song it was. I think we did Hot for Teacher or whatever, and I used to love doing that one, and Panama. I used to love doing that one. They were really big, and then we started doing some of the other ones. I forget what they were from the Unlawful Kernel Knowledge album. We did some of the stuff off of that one, and some of it we did really well. Some of it, wasn't quite there. A song I used to like to play was "Human Beings." That because it was just it was such a fun song to jam on, and I love the solo in it and everything. It's a really cool song, and stuff like that. And the point I'm getting at is that, like, it took a while to get it to click. It wasn't that was a really difficult song to play. It was actually quite relatively easy of a song to play. But we couldn't get it to click. And I don't know exactly what part of the band was kind of uneasy with it. I can't remember if it was the drums weren't quite tight enough or whatever, or if it was the singer just couldn't quite get the Sammy Hagar thing down. But anyway, it was just like, okay, well, we'll just drop it. We'll come back to it later. We can, always drop a song and whatever. So anyway, we got the set list. We got out the door. We went and played the first gig with this new bass player, and he was like one of those bass players. He was already in four other bands, and he was just kind of like, we called him the band slut, right? That's how we started. We need to hire another band slut, and it's basically what we're referring to as bass players, because all these bass players that we met, they were in like four bands at a time type of thing, but they were playing every night. You know what I mean? Like that's why, right? So what he was like, he goes, I like you guys the best sound wise, and I like you guys the best music. Like like he always said to me, he goes, dude, you're a killer guitar player, and the sound of that guitar is just awesome. He goes, I'll be on stage with you anytime, man. And it's like he would be like going say, look, you guys sound the best. You guys are probably the best players of the other bands, but the other guys are playing 4 nights a week. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. So we started playing, and then finally he left the band, and some of the other band members, and you're going to get this too, is that some of the other band members were like, well, he doesn't quite fit our image and stuff. I was like, I don't care. It's like he's good. The audience loves him. He's fun. Yeah, he takes up a lot of space in the vehicles when we're transporting equipment. I get it, but the guy's dedicated. He's in it. Like let's end the search here. We got him, right? Let's just get some gigs under our belt. So we did a couple of gigs with him, and then he ended up, I guess, it was like, well, you're not really what we're looking for and stuff like that. Some other people have made this decision in the band to kind of like get rid of them or whatever. And I'm like, I'm not the one telling them, because it's like, I remember I talked to him after and said, yeah, I said, dude, I wanted you to stay in the band for sure. Like, I mean, if I ever break up with the other guys, you and I getting together, that's something. Yeah, that's cool, whatever. And that's the other thing is, bands, you can't take it personally when you get kicked out of a band. I've never been actually kicked out of a band, but I've been kind of like, if you want to call it, ghosted out of a band, where it's just like, yeah, they're oh, we thought we'd get together tonight, and they'd forget to call me, you know what I mean? So I was like, okay, yeah. So they just didn't have the fortitude to tell me I was out, right? And again, it was just, oh well, this guy doesn't quite, he doesn't quite fit with what we're doing. So you could take it personally or whatever, or you could just move on and find some. My favorite bass player, and this guy was really awesome. His name was Remy. This guy was, he was a blast. And the problem was with this band, and it was after him, that not long after him, that this band broke up. And the reason why I'm telling you these stories is because, like, if you're thinking of getting into the band, you're going to come up with stuff like this too. But anyway, this bass player, we probably went through a couple others by this time. And then anyway, this bass player, his name was Remy. This guy lived in Montreal, and he basically lived in a Chevette. And he basically had his big ass amp in the back seat, and his one or two basses in the front seat. You would sleep in this Chevette. You would drive from Montreal to Toronto, and this guy, all he did was play. And we jammed with him one night, and it's like, okay, let's book a gig because this guy's ready to go. Like, this guy was just phenomenal. He was good. But he was a lot older than us. Well, not a lot older. We were in our 20s. He was in his 30s. But this guy was just a freaking riot on stage. Him and I would like start doing the Judas Priest thing, with the necks swinging back and forth and all that. And oh yeah, it's like we'd have such a good time. But he was a working musician. It's like, guys, either you keep me busy or I'm gone. And again, the other guys were kind of like, well, he's a little bit older or whatever. When people are younger, they tend to take stuff like that as more, like a band in their 20 somethings is not going to behave like a band in their 30s or their 40s, right? Where like that image thing matters so much. And you got to think back when it was. Like, now it's probably not the same as it was, say, in the 80s and 90s, where image was a lot of effort, too much effort was put on image. It's still that bad in the music industry, there's no doubt about that. But today, but it back then, like from a band point of view, like in the 70s, pretty much anyone would probably jam with anybody in the 60s, the same thing. So if your guitar player was 42 and the drummer was 18 and the bass player was 29, it didn't matter, you know what I mean, as long as the music was good, right? And yeah, so the image thing became a big problem with a lot of the bands that I come and gone with. I'd fit the image and stuff like that, usually no problem, but it was starting to become more of a, you needed a dress code to to play live, you know what I mean? So you had to be this way. Oh, maybe you should consider getting tattoos and hair extensions or whatever. It's like, okay, yeah, I draw the line at that, you know what I mean? Yeah, I had long hair back then and stuff like that, but it's like, okay, my hair's already long. It doesn't have to be, like, I'm not going to get hair extensions. But some guys were, some of the bands were into that. Like you had to have that full image. Now just like, that's not for me. You know what I mean? I mean, it might have worked for them at the time, but those things, they didn't really last. The music would be much more important, and how well you play would be much more important than that image stuff. Like, so I mean, you go on stage with a certain image, that's fine. But some bands just put so much effort onto their image that they really, they had the look and everything like that. I'd go with some friends to go check out like a local band or whatever, and you'd listen to them. It's like, oh, these guys are really cool. And you go listen, and it's like, they're really not that good. Like, and I wasn't being snobbish or anything like that. I'm like, they're not really that good. They're no better than anybody else. But what the people were into was the rock star wannabe look. You know what I mean? And the attitude and bravado. So they performed well. They just weren't very good. You know what I mean? Like they were playing 3-chord rock. You know what I mean? They weren't Steve Vai. You know, and stuff like that. So it's like, okay, that would work for me, for these bands for maybe a month or two, and then you'd never hear from them again. So that was something to watch out for. Was that, that image thing where it's like, like there was a lot of band member or bass players and other guitar players and even singers that, like I thought they had great talent, but they weren't a fit for the band. You know what I mean? Like it was like, oh, that guy's too old, or that guy's doesn't his hair's not long enough, or whatever it was. It just really binded things up. So you got to watch out for that pitfall too. You know what I mean? But that said, if it's a good quality musician and they've got the right personality and everything, go for it. Then you got these other people that were just impossible to work with. Uh, Again, I was always a guy, like I've never exploded on anybody ever. Like in my, all the bands I ever went in. But it wasn't uncommon to be in a band and have like band members feuding. And I've always said this to the guys. I said, guys, whatever you got going on, either hold it in, okay, and deal with it later. Don't take it out on, like, don't feud on stage. There's nothing worse than when band members feud on stage. Like it's kind of like passive aggressive, but it makes the whole band sound like if one sounds bad, like if one guitar's out of tune, everybody's out of tune. If the vocal misses the note, the band misses the note. If the drummer misses the beat, the band misses the beat. The bass player is off time, the band is off time. You know what I mean? Like it only takes one person to stand out to make the rest of the band sound bad. Is the point I'm getting at. So one looks bad, we all look bad, right? So if you've ever been on a stage when there's two band members feuding, your blood runs cold. It's like, well, okay, guys, like just kind of pull it together now. And I've experienced that twice, and it was, like, mind you, I didn't stay in those bands very long because of that. It's just like, look, if you guys can't get it together, whatever issues you have with each other, like, and it was always like petty little stuff that you'd be like, what the heck are you even feuding over, And but music is a weird thing because when people don't have an instrument in their hand, they tend to be very open and talkative and everything like that. When they have an instrument in their hand, sometimes it changes their personality, and in weird ways. And I experienced this fairly recently, where it's like I was talking to some people and I went and jammed with them. I hadn't jammed with anybody in a while, but it was kind of cool. But there was, like, you could tell that this would be a band that would be hard to work with, or one member would be hard to work with, just because it's like they were a totally different person when they were playing. They were, really bossy and really, kind of strange. Like they weren't mean or, arrogant or anything like that, but they were just kind of like, no, it's this way. You know what I mean? Kind of type of thing. And it's just like, whoa, like, relax, remember, this is about having fun, whatever. So, like, long term, you're not gonna invest into that band, because it's like, it's not an issue right now because you're just jamming, but it would become an issue if you were on stage or on tour. If you had to, like, would this person have a meltdown on stage type of thing and play rock star on you? You know what I mean? Like, nobody wants to be, nobody wants that uncomfortableness in their band. You see this all the time with big rock stars. Like I don't even know if it's they can't handle the fame or whatever, but and I don't even think it's an ego thing. It's just a weird thing where it's like they have like this insecurity of, how do I put this into words? It's kind of like they have an insecurity of their importance in the band or something like that, or maybe like an insecurity of, like, we got to make sure this sounds so good that, like they can't relax, or that they have to have so much control over every thing in the band that it restricts everybody from creativity. You get personalities that are like that, and it's weird because, like, as soon as they put down the instrument, they're cool again. Like, I don't know if you guys have ever noticed that, but I've noticed that, and it was weird. It was just weird. Again, I would be like, okay, well, it is what it is. Okay, maybe I should start looking for another band because this one's probably not going to last too long. And it was never, again, I never fought with anybody. I've enjoyed myself every band I was in, but I did notice there was, the reason why some of the bands that I was in didn't last long was usually these issues, right? The other one was, and I only had it happen to me once on stage, where like somebody else steals your part, like, okay, I'm going to do that, which I wouldn't care as long as I knew it was coming, so I'd know what to do, right? So, like, don't throw the other guy off, right? And I had that happen once where one guitar player stole the solo on me, and it's like, whoa, we both broke into the solo at the same time. It was, oh, sorry, dude, I was just feeling it and whatever. I was just getting really into it. It was like, okay, well, I said, I don't mind. You can do the guitar solo, but just let me know what's coming. Like, and that was probably the maddest I ever got. And obviously, I wasn't very mad. He apologized, and I said, oh, don't worry about it. But I mean, I just, you know, don't surprise me like that, because again, if I look bad, everybody looks bad. If you look bad, everybody looks bad. Like, so just, don't surprise people like that, because that usually does create feuds on stage and stuff like that later on, or even behind, in the practice, whatever. Yeah, so always communication is always the number one. Always be honest, even when it's hard. Always be honest, because like some people, will, when you see two band members fighting, or two or three band members fighting, it's really, it can really, like really damper, like it's supposed to be fun, right? It's not supposed to be dramatic and all that. So the other thing is punctuality. Like some band members are more punctual than others, so you really got to get to used to see what kind of person that you're in a band with. Some people are really ultra reliable. Okay, the gig starts at this time, be there. Other people will show up 2 minutes before you go on stage, type of thing. I had a singer like that. I loved her to death, but it's like, if you didn't go and wrangle her and drag her to the gig, she was always like, oh, I had to do my hair and I had to do this. I was like, yeah, but we're on stage, and here she is running through the door. Just like, is she even gonna make it? Like, like, you make us sweat, why don't you? Loved her to death. She drove us nuts, but we loved her to death. We had a lot of fun though. She was pretty cool. But like, you just, like, if you said, okay, the practice is, okay, we're going to be practicing for 9, say the practice is at 7:30, and she'd get there for 9, that kind of stuff. Oh, she was horrible for it. Oh yeah, I'd be waiting on her, like, everything was last minute with her. It was just like, it was just so, but it became so predictable that we were able to successfully plan around her like delays, you know what I mean? Yeah. So it was, but once she was on stage, she was phenomenal. Like, she was actually really, 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 really good. Whatever. And we had a lot of fun. The other thing is this one was something I had noticed. I never really had done it with any other band or like that, where it's like we'd be opening for a band, or we'd be just in the vicinity of another band, and the feuding amongst band to band. I never understood that, where it's like, a band would come along and you'd play, or they'd play or you play, and then somebody would start shit between this band and that. I never understood that. Like, I was just like, why do we even have time for that? It's like, oh, somebody criticized your guitar playing. Okay, well, let them. Or somebody criticized, like, like, you can critique people and stuff like that. There's no problem, but it's like, oh, well, that guy sucks because of this, and I think that most of that comes from insecurity. I remember, this, and this always made me feel good. And again, I'm not tooting my own horn or anything like that. Don't take it that way. But the guitar I used to play, that Green Hammer Diablo in my Ibanez and stuff like that, particularly that Green Hammer Diablo. Everybody I ever talked to that has ever heard that guitar live has always said it was one of the best sounding guitars they've ever heard in a band. On stage, I remember one sound man. He just loved that guitar. He wanted to buy it off, and he's like, "That guitar just sounds so killer." He says, "Your rig is just like, it just, the sound was so good on it." I miss that guitar. And I remember there was a couple of times, and it was just this one guy. I don't even know what his name was. He was in another band, and I guess I don't know if it was a jealousy thing or what it was, but he took a disliking to my playing, and he's like, "Oh, that guy just sucks so much," and he'd trash me up and down, and I'd always hear about it, and they'd always say the same thing. I was like, "Oh, his guitar playing sucks so bad, and his guitar sucks so much," and they're like, "Are you kidding me? That's like one of the best sounding guitars I've ever heard." And everybody would always tell me that, like, that guitar just sounded so wicked. Even if you couldn't play it, it wouldn't matter. Everything sounded good out of it. And they'd say, "Of course you can play, but but you know what I mean? Like, it was like, maybe pick on Reg, fine, but don't pick on his guitar. That guitar is awesome, and stuff like that. They'd always tell him to shut up, and I'm like, okay, why? But like, you know what I mean? But like, why does that band need to feud? You know what I mean? So that stuff is just a distraction. People still do it. I don't know why they do it, but they do it. Just go out there and enjoy yourself. That's the other thing. Why are you in the band? If you're in a band, why are you in there? What are you in it for? I mean, most people, have the reality that you're not going to get rich doing it, right? Most places don't pay. You know what I mean? So even if you're lucky enough to get a gig, most of the time, if it pays at all, it doesn't pay very much. Like some gigs do pay well. I mean, there were some places we got, it was like $600 a night for 4 guys. That's not too bad. Most places it would be like 175 a night for the 5-piece band. Like whatever it would be. And other times it was just you could play here or not, fuck off. You know what I mean? Like we're not paying you nothing. So most of the time we didn't do a gig unless we got paid. Because we had pay the gas and pay this and pay that. So we were always lucky that we had paying gigs. So we were still playing 4 nights a week in some of the bands that I was in. But the thing is, we did played 4 nights a week, like throughout the summer type of thing. We did this for a couple of years. But the thing is that like, what were we doing it for? We obviously weren't getting rich on it. And yeah, like in the beginning, you get this idea that okay, we're going to go all the way. We're going to start here. And we're going to be the band, the road to somewhere, that kind of stuff. And then after a while, you realize, okay, that's not how it works. Like it's not going to be the we're not going to make it big doing this, right? Like that. You start to realize that the music industry that you hear on the radio is a very selective thing. It's very small. When you think about the amount of musicians that are out there, it is very small. You don't have a lot of reach unless you have good promotion and stuff like that. So when you're talking about playing bars to get, well, we've got to play all these bars so we can get real popular. Once you've played every bar in your city, pretty much, or all the prominent ones, and played them multiple times over, are you any more popular? Like you're gonna go there and you're gonna play. Okay, this is my 15th time playing here, and every time you get off the stage, wow, this is the first time seeing you guys. You're gonna get that all the time. Like it's like, geez, I thought I'd be a rock star by now, but it doesn't really happen. But you know what? I had a great time, and the people listening had a great time. So for me, it's about the fun, right? You can treat it like a business. You can become a working musician. Right now, okay, with what's going on in the world, it's hard to be a working musician, but it's still possible, but you got to kind of rethink of how you're going to do it. I think the days of the grand rock stars with, like 300,000 people, in the audience in these outdoor massive gigs, I think that might be go the way of the dodo, like the superstar rock stars. I think, in the next 10, 15 years, it's just going to be niche bands, like where everybody has their little following, but there's, unless it's allowed on the radio, it's going to be, it's only, if you look at radio now, it's really a handful of bands. Like it's really so small in comparison to what's actually out there. And the independent market is a little bit different because, yeah, there's tons out there, but it's just an abyss, right? So how do you separate yourself? How do you get promoted? How do you, like, are we going to ever see another Elvis Presley or Michael Jackson again? I don't know. You know what I mean? Are we ever going to see another Led Zeppelin or, like another Metallica? I don't know. You know what I mean? Like how big are people going to get going forward? I don't know. So I wouldn't want to focus solely on that. I would want to focus on what do you enjoy about it, And there's some people that join a band, like they love being musicians, but they hate being in a band. And they don't realize that, and they usually ruin it for others that are in the band that really enjoy it. Because, like I said, they become moody, they do all kinds of strange things, right? This is very similar to my Hammer Diablo there that I was talking about. If you ever get a chance to buy one of those Hammer guitars, buy them. They're great if they're in good condition, if you can find one in good condition. But yeah, so why are you getting in the band? That's a very important question to ask. Why are you getting into it? Like what do you want to get out of it, right? Now that said, one thing I've always gotten out of it, and I really noticed it more when I started doing like solo act, acoustic guitar, or mandolin or whatever, and just played, one-man band kind of stuff, was how much I enjoyed the audience. That was, for me, was the big one. I love jamming with people on stage. I love it when it comes together and it really rocks out and you have a lot of fun. But what I like is watching the audience. That was the big thing. In fact, it got to the point, like in my 20s, for example, we'd go on stage. We had one rule: basically drink as much as you want, as long as you could still play your instrument in time. You know what I mean? And we held to that rule, not too closely, but close enough that we never got booted out of anywhere and never told to don't come back again. We never got that far. But I remember I used to get a little bit sauced up or whatever, not too bad, but and then whatever, and you think you're really good. And back then, we didn't have the social media you have now. Like, if I bet you some of the gigs I played were really, 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 really good, but I bet you there's a few of them, more than a few of them that I played where it's like, you guys were way too drunk to be playing. You played too fast. You played way out of time. You think you're great, but like, you're not. But when you play bone sober, your ears won't lie to you, and neither will the audience, right? So a drunk audience with a drunk band kind of works because the audience doesn't really know, as long as they're having fun, right? But a sober band and a drunk audience works even better. Why? Because the audience is in party mode, and the band is like at the top of their game. And one of the things is when you pull off, and again, you're going to get, no matter how high level of a musician you are, you're going to get some nights where it's just like nothing, like stage gremlins show up and everything goes awry on you. You're going to get shows like that. Don't take them personally. Like, equipment breaks down on stage, your strings break. Just enjoy it. You know what I mean? Like, it's like it happens. Don't take things personally. I remember, like one guitar player, and like if he broke a string on stage, it was like he'd be talking about it for weeks. I'm like, I've broken several strings on stage. I don't know how many I broke on stage. I don't care. I remember, and one thing I remember doing this. To give you an example, like I think I was playing the Les Paul at the time, and I broke an E string, and I broke it halfway through the guitar solo where I needed the E string, and I just, okay, well, music theory kicked in, go here, you know what I mean? And I kept the solo going, and again, it was one of the, I don't know what song it was, but it was one with a rather long guitar solo, as it seemed. I'm like, well, the show must go on. That's all I thought in my head, and I was like, okay, I'll just pay attention to the fretboard and see what I can come up with, right? And I pulled out this wicked guitar solo, and then at the very end of the guitar solo, there was a guy in the audience, basically feet from the stage, and he was rocking out with his buddies or whatever, and a couple of girls, whatever. And he's like, "Look, his string was even broken," And it's like, I had a string dangling. He goes, "I didn't even notice, dude. That was awesome." I was like, then we kicked into I switched guitars. We kicked into the next song, and I'm like, yeah, I felt good about myself that night because it's like I pulled it off where it went seamless, where something went wrong on stage, but it didn't matter. The only time I didn't like things going wrong on stage was when my amp would crap out on me, or my rack effect thing, my GFX7 twin tubes, the thing would start humming on me because there was a short in it, and it would scare the shit out of the audience because it sounded like a moose humping a beluga, a wooga horn. Like, it was a horrible sound. Like that, and all of a sudden I'd be pounding on top of the amp, and then the amp would go quiet, and the guitar sound would come back. Say, okay, let's keep playing. Sometimes it would do it halfway through a song, though, and that got annoying. That got annoying. Everybody's like, "Reg, you gotta fix that thing. You gotta fix that thing." It eventually fried out for me, and then I was like, it turned me off of rack effects anyway. And then I just started playing straight through the amp. It's like, okay, no fuss, no muss, and more reliable. Didn't sound as cool, but it was a lot more reliable. But yeah, like the show must go on attitude was a lot better to have. The biggest thing I find that I'm up against now, like trying to get together with bands and stuff like that, is I can find lots of musicians, it seems, but I can't find a lot of musicians with spare time. And my most recent stuff was obviously working with my friend Amanda and stuff like that. But right now, she's homeschooling the boys, and she's got her shop, so she's like crazy busy. So for her and I to get together, it's hard. But I was just doing videos with her, like for YouTube and stuff like that. But I was hoping that like we'd get really into it and we could do gigs together at some point. Um, when I was doing the jam nights, like like 2018, 2019, uh, I was getting ready to set myself up for playing gigs, and a lot of people don't understand. Like when you want to if you want to play 4 nights a week, it'll take you 6 months just to be able to book those gigs. Because a lot of times you book the gig and there's like sometimes you want to book a gig. What are you doing this Thursday? Okay, yeah, okay, I'll play Thursday, Friday, Saturday, whatever night it would be. But other times what happens is it's like, oh, okay, yeah, we're booked up for the next 6 months. And that's what happened to me was it's like, okay, well, um, I gotta, like the lady was telling me, okay, yeah, yeah. So she goes, well, we're booked up for like pretty much the entire summer, and it's not too crazy during the winter. So, maybe on the next season we'll get you in, and then of course the world fell apart. So I didn't get that gig, right? So it's like because they don't do gigs there anymore. So I got to find gigs other places, right? Um, and that's what I'm finding is the big problem now. But one thing I did like was the amount of musicians that I was talking to at these jam nights. That I knew at some point there was going to be some cool collaborations had it kept going, right? And I've now kind of found a way to kind of track some of these musicians down. And some of these musicians were, maybe not my style of music, but just really good musicians. And I'd like to see if I could do even a couple of song collaborations with them. So even if I'm not playing live, maybe we do live streaming. Maybe that's the new way forward. Uh, like if you're in a jam spot, okay, and you can't play a live gig, why not do? I mean, with because we didn't have that back in the '90s or even in the early 2000s to do this live streaming stuff, right? Um, so now you can. I know a girl from my neighboring town here. Uh, she doesn't really live there anymore, but her band is like she still like tours in Sweden and comes back here and into Canada and stuff like that. She goes down the States. She doesn't travel all the time, but she does some pretty cool gigs, all over the place. And she's still a working musician. You know what I mean? Maybe not full time, but enough to say that she's still active in it. But one thing she does is she does these like little like her parents or I don't know if it's her parents or her uncles or whoever owns it. They own a restaurant, and then whenever the restaurant's cleared out, she puts on like a little live stream, and I'm like, that's brilliant. You know what I mean? It's a great way to reach an audience when your audience can't be there, right? So again, modern solutions to modern problems. But I'm also like, okay, well, if you were going to be jamming and sometimes when you jam it's like, oh, I wish there would have been an audience in front of us because we killed that jam, right? Just really knocked it out of the park. That's another way to kind of really share your music, and that might be a solution for a lot of people who just can't afford to take the time to gig. It's like, well, I work every weekend, and that's in 1995 when I quit my last band. That's what it was. Uh, you know, and I tried to get into bands here and there in between then and now, and it was always the same thing. It's just like, okay, yeah, we jam a couple of times, and then I'm just too busy. You kind of get ghosted on it, and it's just like, okay, well, that person never really wanted to be in the band. They never wanted to go far with it, right? Um, and you'll get that. Like there was a couple of guys I was jamming with, haven't jammed with them in a while, but they all got so busy that we can't jam anymore, right? And we were having fun too. Like I mean, these guys were, getting good, but they were also one of the problems was like one of the guys I went to school with and stuff like that, and it's just kind of one of those things that they couldn't, say, well, if we're gonna gig, we got to get a set list, and it was just kind of like it seems like he never wants the guy that has a jam spot. He doesn't really ever want to play live. He's always coming up, oh well, it'll take us this long, and I want to make sure we got everything perfect. Kind of going over like where I started with the video, and whatever. Oh, and it has to pay this much, or it's not. Whatever uh, to do it. I'm saying, yeah, well, don't worry about the pay thing. Like, we don't have to play gigs every week. We could wait for the good, like get a prom, you get $1,500 or $3,000 or whatever. Yeah, it's worth it, even if you only get like 2 or 3 gigs like that a year, even if it's divided amongst 4 or 5 people. Those are good gigs, right? So rather than worrying about the $40 from the bar, like, don't go after those gigs, go after the big stuff. So you're not going to play as much, but when the gig comes up, you got to be ready to go. And you know what I mean, like, and it just seems like, and another friend of mine, we had a discussion on that. It's like, oh yeah, it's like they're great guys to jam with, but they're, like they just don't want to ever get out of the garage. You know what I mean? And it's one of those things that if you look at things more as projects, this is a Hammer Diablo right here. Mine was emerald green, but yeah, that's what they are. Um, uh, like if you could look at like jamming with people or joining bands as projects rather than permanent bands, I think it makes it easier to find more people because you can do multiple things. The main reason why I wanted to do the one-man band thing was just because it was easier because I know I would show up on time. You know what I mean? And I know that, like when I know when to get the gigs. You know what I mean? That kind of stuff. So whereas, when you have to rely on other people that are not really into it, and I'll tell you one thing, I don't really want to play 4 nights a week. That gets old pretty fast. Once it becomes a job, you no longer have fun with it. But if I did, like, say, a gig, 2 or 3 gigs a month, I'd be happy with that. I don't want to play a couple of nights in a row. I'd rather play like one really like killer good show a month. Something like, okay, wait for, like 12 good shows a year, and just like put all your effort into that, make it a big place, make it a, like try to get yourself into something really big. You know what I mean? And just really enjoy it and really give the audience 110%. For that night, so that it gives them something they're going to remember for the rest of their lives, hopefully, or care to remember for the rest of their lives. Maybe that's a better way to put it. And that's what I wanted to do. So when I was doing the jam nights again, I was kind of like, like one of the things I would always do is, especially if you're mainly playing covers, is, you could throw an original in there too if you want in most places, but a lot of places they don't want original bands, they want covers. But some places are getting better on that. But you go and you try different things and see what, just play something different every time you go and just see what the audience really likes. But one thing you'll also do when you're there is really work on and this is what I think makes a good band versus a not so great band. It's not always about the musicianship. I will put it this way. When you're in your room practicing, you're a musician first. When you're learning, you're a musician first. Okay, when you're recording, you're a musician first. When you're live on the stage, you're an entertainer first and then a musician second. And if you approach it like that, you will understand that there's more to the package than just playing really, really well. Always play to the best of your abilities. Always, sure, granted. But put on a show. Give them something to remember you by. And interact with the audience. And one of the things I found for myself, I've had quite a few people tell me this, that your stage presence is really good. And I always thank them for the compliment, because it's like, well, the reason why it's good is because, number one, when I'm up there, I'm bone sober, and I've planned it out, I've practiced it. Okay, I know my job, I'm going to play well, but now I'm going to feed it to you as entertainment. So in other words, I'll play a song, I'll move around a bit, I'll crack a joke, I'll do whatever, I'll make faces, whatever it takes to get the audience to react to it, right? And I'll try to get sing-alongs. I'll do this. One song I really love playing live that I find is just so fun to play live is Rasputin, the Rasputin song. It's like I do a big kind of lead up to it and stuff like that, and the audience is like, what is this maniac talking about? Then you go into the Rasputin song, and then they get the theatrics of like what you do, right? So leading up to the song, so it's like, oh, okay, this is so fun, and I think it's important that we don't lose fact of why we're on stage or why we're getting into a band. Some people, yeah, they think it's just about the fame and stuff like that, but you won't go far if you're just going into it for the fame. You're definitely not going to go far if you're getting into it just for the money. You might get lucky and be able to make a living at it. But if you're going to make a living at it, chances are means you're going to have to bust your ass working, and you're going to have to work smart, because it's not just as simple as learning how to play the guitar, getting on stage, and making money. It doesn't, like, that doesn't get you as far as you think it will. It's, you got to learn marketing, you got to learn how to promote yourself. That stuff is the stuff I'm learning now. Uh, you know, for the digital age, right? Back in the day, you made a poster and you just posted it all over the city and hope people show up, and you told all your friends and told them to bring their friends, and etc., etc. You know, um, times have changed. It's never been easier, but it's never been harder, right? Because everybody's doing it. But to set yourself aside from other people and how they play, and whatever, that's always going to be something that, like, there's no one formula that works for all. That's why, some people make a go of it and some people don't. But I'd say, as long as you never break rule number one, and rule number one to me is have fun, enjoy it, right? Because if you're not enjoying yourself, you're not going to stick with it. And not only that, you don't want to make it a traumatic experience. So be careful of who you get involved with, because, like I say, there's some people, like I say, when they're fine when you're talking to them, but as soon as they pick up an instrument, they change into, like a Jekyll and Hyde type of thing. I don't know why some people are like this. I think, there's probably other issues why they're like that, but some people are hard to work with. So find people you can work with. Once you find people that you can work with and that really enjoy being on stage and stuff like that, and finding people that learn how to relax on stage, because I think a lot of some of it could be just nerves. Some people, they get nervous, they get really edgy when they're nervous, and they tend to take it out on everybody around them. I was always fortunate that I never really got super nervous on stage, because maybe because I'm a attention whore or whatever, but I've also found that it was one of those things that if you were on stage with the right people, it was just super fun. And when you were having fun, the audience was having fun, and when you see the audience having fun, you have even more fun, and that's pretty cool. That is pretty cool, and it's something that I don't look at it as something that I get out of it. I'm looking at it as something that I get to give to people. The gift of music, the gift of the enjoyment of the live show. And I think about it from the point of view of what would I want to see live. If I was going to go to a show and they were playing the songs I was playing, how would I want to see them perform it? And when you start approaching your live show like that too, your stage presence, number one, gets better, but number two, people enjoy it. People really enjoy it, and that's why you do it. You know what I mean? Because yeah, sure, great if you can make money off of it, but even if you can't, it's something that you're going to do for the rest of your life, because it's just something you become passionate about. Because of all the things that have happened in the world in the last past year or so, I think the stage is what I miss the most. Hopefully someday I'll be on the stage again soon, but if not, I will find another way to get out to the people. You know what I mean? Because I think there's always a show ready to go somewhere. You just got to find it, right? You got to go get that gig, and that gig could be anywhere. So if you can't find a gig, make the gig. All right, so anyway, I guess I'll leave it about that. So I just thought it'd be an interesting little conversation to have. All links are down below if you'd like to help support the channel. Next to that, rate, subscribe, share, comment, like, be true to yourself, be true to others, always do the right thing. Have yourselves a great day, eh?